Okay, just a minute. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. For those of you who were in the previous session, thanks for joining this one. And for those of you just joining, we're really glad you're here. Thank you for attending our MSW concentration and curriculum session. The session will go from 5:30 to 7. My name is Lisa O'Donnell. I am the director of the MSW program. I'm also going to be facilitating today's session. So first, let me just quickly explain what our plan is for today, and then I want to give a couple notes before we get started. So we're going to start with Dr. Suzanne Brown and Jason Carbone, who are going to provide information about the advanced year concentrations, interpersonal practice, and innovation in community policy and leadership, I-CPL, as well as curriculum within those concentrations. Then we have a wonderful panel of alumni who've all graduated from our MSW program, have gone on to do some impressive things with their degrees. So they're going to talk about their experiences in the program as well as their career paths. So before we get started, I just want to explain a couple things. So we already had an informational session. So the questions that we will be responding to during this session will be focused on the concentrations, curriculums, and questions for the panelists and the faculty who are going to be presenting. So any questions about admissions, the application process, licensure, we will invite you to look up our information sessions that we have coming up to get further information, and we can pop that in the chat as well to let you know when the next one is so you can join for those questions. Please post all of your questions in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them in the chat, or we will also have a Q&A component if time permitting of this session, and we can answer some of them verbally as well. Okay. All right, so let's get started with Dr. Sue Brown. She is professor in the School of Social Work, as well as the lead for the interpersonal practice, which she is now going to discuss.
Welcome,
I'm sorry.
everyone.
I'm having a hard time making you co-host. It will not let me. I don't know why.
Can anyone change the sharing options? Is that possible? To let others share.
Let me see. Andre, I'm going to make you host and see if you can try it. How
Yeah,
about
we
that?
might have too many. Oh, I don't know.
Oh, maybe you have too many hosts.
You
Yeah.
think? All right,
Make
I'm going
me
to take
host.
Amelia. So yeah, it's okay. I'll make you host.
Sue, I think
Well,
you should be able to try to share now.
Okay, cool. Let me see.
Thanks, Jason.
Yes, again, thank you very much. Okay. Let me do that. All right, and just move that to slideshow. If you hear a dog barking, my dog is simply having a temper tantrum, so hopefully he's not going to disrupt too much. But let me say, I'm Sue Brown, and I'm a professor here in the School of Social Work. Welcome, everyone. I have been here in the School of Social Work for about 13 years now, and I am the chair of the Interpersonal Practice concentration, or what we call IP. So I'll be calling it IP from here on out. And when I say IP, I mean interpersonal practice. I also do research and scholarship in the areas of substance misuse, trauma, social support, and women. So, okay, there we go. So before I talk about IP, as we call it, let me talk for a second about social work as a profession and kind of give you that overview, and then that'll help you understand where IP fits within social work as a profession. So social work concerns itself with assessment and intervention across the domains of micro, meso, and macro practice. When we talk about micro practice, that refers to what happens within the individual. So often what happens internally with the individual is psychology and biology. Meso practice tends to focus on family and small groups and what happens interpersonally between people. Whereas macro practice considers both groups and larger systems like agencies and society and culture and policies, leadership, and larger social change. So where does IP fit within that micro, meso, and macro, those concepts. So specifically, IP focuses primarily on the individual, families, and small groups somewhat. As this diagram shows, we focus on the micro as well as the interpersonal relationships and interactions between people. So that's that overlap there between micro and meso that you see in this diagram. We also look at the impact of larger systems, policies, and societies on individual and family functioning and small group functioning. So you can see macro there with those arrows, considering, hey, how does context, how do larger policies impact how individuals experience themselves in the world and how relationships happen over time? So that overlap with micro and meso. For example, we may focus on individual and family functioning, but we may also ask questions such as, what is the impact of racism on individual functioning? Or how might poverty impact various aspects of family functioning? And most importantly, how do we assess individuals and intervene with individuals while holding their social context or the context of their lives in mind? So what are the goals of the interpersonal practice curriculum area? Well, the goal of IP is for students to become independent social work practitioners who are skilled in individual, family, group, and organizational interventions across client systems and across different service delivery systems. And I'll talk in a minute about what kind of service delivery systems we think about. So a successful graduate from our program, ideally, will have developed advanced knowledge and skills to engage in clinical practice, such as clinical case management, advocacy, program and practice evaluation, and organizational leadership. But you find that a lot of IP graduates actually really focus on that clinical practice and clinical case management area. Prerequisites to the advanced IP curriculum area include your generalist year courses and also 7160, which is DSM in clinical practice. Then in the advanced year, in the first semester of the advanced year, well, first the generalist courses and the DSM course really set the stage for your success as you move into the advanced curriculum by taking an assessment course and then an integrative intervention course. So that's 8305 and 8315. In 8305, you'll learn advanced skills for assessing psychosocial functioning of individuals and families, while in 8315, you learn about the current practice approaches and models from multiple traditions. These traditions may include psychodynamic theory, client-centered theory, cognitive behavioral, and family systems approaches. Then finally, IP students get to choose an intervention course from these four traditions to dive more deeply into treatment and intervention approaches from one of these perspectives. And again, they're psychodynamic, family systems, client-centered, and cognitive behavioral approaches. You may also take additional IP, interpersonal practice, elective courses. We have quite a few of those. They include interpersonal practice in trauma and PTSD, interpersonal practice in substance use and misuse, IP with children and adolescents, infant mental health courses, ethics and professionalism, and evaluation research. So any of those may be electives that you want to take. On top of that, we have some focal areas. So focal areas allow students to put together a series of courses that focus on one specialized area of interest by taking electives and a specialized policy course in one of these focal areas. And our focal areas include violence and trauma, work with older adults, behavioral health and substance misuse, and children and families. So what kinds of jobs do IP social workers get following graduation? Well, there's quite a range. My own trajectory in social work began working with adolescents in residential treatment facilities. Then I moved on to provide individual and family counseling and case management to individuals and families in community mental health. I worked providing assessments and behavior plans for older adults with mental health issues in nursing home settings. And eventually I moved into supervision and administration in community mental health. Other IP social workers may work in hospital settings on various types of hospital-based units, including maternity units, emergency departments, and even dialysis units, among others. Some former IP students work in hospice and home palliative care organizations. Some work in schools, assisting teachers and administrators in managing students' behavioral health challenges. IP social workers also work in community mental health centers and federally qualified health centers and family service agencies. They provide child and family counseling and case management. They provide infant mental health services, and some work in integrated healthcare outpatient settings using a multidisciplinary team approach. Some IP social workers work in substance abuse treatment programs, providing primarily group treatment, and others work in traditional psychotherapy settings, such as outpatient behavioral health programs and practices, where they may provide individual, couple, family, and group counseling services. There are many career options for IP social workers and many more than I can enumerate in this presentation. And jobs in social work actually are increasing and opening up. So you will not be without a job prospects upon graduation and in being a social worker. Another thing to consider that's true in my own trajectory is that there are many different ways you can be a social worker. And as you heard from my own path, there are many different opportunities that you may choose as you move through your career. You'll hear more about that from our panel, and I'll be here to continue to answer questions if need be. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Carbone, who's going to talk with you about our I-CPL concentration. Let me stop sharing. Jason, take it away.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Give me just 1 second here. Pull this up. All right, there we go. Hello. So my name is Jason Carbone. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Social Work. I am chair of the Innovation in Community Policy and Leadership, or as I'll refer to it as I-CPL concentration. More abbreviated, sometimes we just call it the macro concentration, but that's an oversimplification, as you'll see. But we can call it that. So I want to share a little bit with you about what that looks like. So as always, Dr. Brown likes to steal a little bit of my thunder when she goes first, when she draws the straw or the flip of the coin to go first. But I mean, she covered all this. What I would like to add to that is, especially from a macro perspective, my opinion is, and excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so hopefully my voice will hold out. But from a macro perspective, I feel like we dichotomize this a little too much and that there's more overlap. So on that previous slide, you saw kind of the Venn diagram. I would argue like the overlap is more. I talk a lot in my students about this, and a lot of macro practice social work is group work, right? So the skills that you develop, those interpersonal skills that you should be developing in your first year of the program translate to this work. It's what makes, I think, macro social workers effective, those foundational social work skills. But we talk about this macro, micro, and there we go. All right. So I also want to share this with you, and this is my perception of this. This is the way I view it, and what makes social work unique and different, and it ties back to kind of what macro social workers do, social workers in general, but specifically macro. So it's the fact that we take a person and environment perspective, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Our commitment as a profession to social justice, right? Not just some nominal statement about it, but genuine commitment to it, which then ties into part 3, right? Which is our code of ethics. I think many professions, especially helping professions, their code of ethics have evolved positively in more recent years. But I think for a long time, social works has been more robust, let's say, than some other professions, in my own personal opinion. And I think it's more core to the work that we do. So to me, this is what makes social work unique. And then when we're talking about how that plays out in the macro field, I know there's a lot on the screen here. But the point of this is those pieces play out in different settings. So when we're talking about macro, when we're talking about I-CPL, we're focused on organizations or communities or policy or society. And you can start to see here just you don't need to digest all this right now, but the point is there are so many points of intervention at the macro level in these different settings. There's just which leads to lots and lots of exciting opportunities for you as you develop as a social worker and you develop your career. And I will guarantee you, I'd put money on it, where you think you're going to end up. If I were to say, where are you going to be in 10 years, chances are you're not going to be there. You're going to be doing something else just because there's so many opportunities. And some of you will probably end up exactly where you think you are. But a lot of you, you'll learn different things. You'll be exposed to different aspects of the profession. You get these random opportunities that come out of the blue. Life happens. It'll take you in different directions. And one of the strengths to me of social work is it prepares you to do that. It prepares you to do everything really on this slide. So and you'll see what that looks like in practice or in reality later on when you hear from some of our former students and hear what has happened as with their careers as they have evolved. All right, so this is the I-CPL concentration. So I want to walk through this a little bit and share a few kind of important points about this. So the first first required course is 7840, the Community and Organizational Measures. Most folks, if they're full-time core students, they'll take that winter semester of their first year. If they're part-time, they might take it then, or over the summer after their first year or advanced standing. They'll take it then as well. So, but that's the kind of the gateway into the concentration. If you are part-time and you have a choice of when you take that and what you take that with, I would highly recommend that you try to take that with 7065, which is the macro theory and practice course. Either take them concurrently or take 7065 first. Sometimes that doesn't always work for part-time students, but I'll tell you, I teach both courses. I'm the lead for 7065. It makes your life a little easier if you have that background going into the community resource class. So that's sort of the baseline to getting and starting the concentration. Then we have our 3 platform classes. That's what we call them: the community class, the policy, and the leadership, the 80, 65, 75, and 85. And you're required to take one of those. Some of our students take 2 or 3, and if you do that, then they just count towards your electives. But you have to take at least one, and then you fill in with 11 electives. And one of the important points here that I have to reiterate often to students, because they don't recognize this, is community policy and leadership are not tracks. We don't have tracks in the I-CPL concentration. So it's not like, okay, I pick policy, then there's certain electives I have to take or that sort of thing, right? You can take, for your platform class, take 80, 75, the community class, and then for electives, take over here to the right side of the screen, 70, 85 leadership is one of your electives. So you're not forced to go a certain way with electives. It's open. The other piece of electives that I always like to say when I have a chance is electives are electives are electives, meaning IP students can take I-CPL electives and vice versa. There's no restriction there. The only restriction is you just got to make sure that sometimes there's a prerequisite that might prevent you from taking a certain class. But for those of you who are IP, you want to be IP, but you think, at some point in time in my career, I want to move into management. I want to supervise other clinicians, not just do clinical work. Then 7085, the leadership course could be appropriate for you. Or you want to develop programs, then the program planning course. So there's opportunities, because I hear this a lot from students, well, I want to do both. Well, there's opportunities to kind of mix it up a little bit. Figure out really what is going to be get you to your goal, what you think your longer term goal is, and then figure out a way to do it. And I'm here to help you. Other faculty are, your advisors are the first one to go to because they know what's available, when and where, like the back of their hand. They can help you work through that and think through that if you need help thinking through that as well. But so again, these electives are open to everyone. And then the last piece of this is this purple box at the bottom, 3 credits in research. And you see there's an asterisk there because 99.9% of the time you're going to be picking one of these 2 courses. There is some kind of independent study stuff that can be an option in certain circumstances, but that's a very unique situation. So 8046 is community data analysis, interpretation, and presentation, which is learning not just how to do data analysis, but what do you do with it? How do you communicate it? How do you interpret your findings and then communicate it in a way to advocate for a program that you want funded or a policy change or that sort of thing. So it's really about using data to communicate a message. And then 8048 is social action research and evaluation. That's more, okay, how do we engage with people in the community to get feedback to inform that work? So it's social action research is a very broad area. The way that course is set up, it's much more qualitative, whereas 8046 is more quantitative. Not all social action research is qualitative, but that course kind of is. So if you're interested in that type of thing, that would be the direction to go. And again, you can take both if you want and count one towards the requirement and the other towards the elective. And then, like all of our MSW students, you are required to take the advanced policy course. And what's cool about that is that pulls students back together. It gives you a chance to kind of mix up with IP and I-CPL students in those classes. And then obviously your practicum requirements. So that's the curriculum. What would this look like? What would you do? So here are some examples of the types of settings that you could work in. I'm not going to read through them all, but you can see again, very diverse in the type of work that you can do. Here are some job role titles by kind of our different areas. Thinking about community policy and leadership. And then I'm going to skip forward. I think you'll have access to these slides, so you can delve into this in more detail if you want. But the point here is just showing you that this is a growth area. I see that 12%. Macro social work, from a Bureau of Labor Statistics standpoint, doesn't fit in a box nice and cleanly. But for the most part, you can see that it's an area for growth. Social work in general is. There's a need. So that job security is out there. Here are some examples of organizations where our graduates are now. You can see they kind of run the spectrum from not-for-profit to governmental to educational, philanthropic, for-profit as well. So just give you a little taste of where the former students are. And here are some of the job titles of those former students, from research to policy analyst to grant management, research assistant, faculty member, adjunct instructor, legislative director, which we'll hear from in a little bit, executive director, as well as others. So again, lots of different opportunities. So if you want to change the physical or social environment in which people live through improved access to healthcare, quality of life, affordable housing, etc., then community-oriented social work practice, macro practice might be for you. If you're interested and you want to change the systems that create the policies and conditions where people live every day, then a policy focus in macro social work might be for you. If you're interested in getting involved to change the way existing organizations function to serve clients better, or you want to start a new organization, then the leadership focus might be the direction that you want to go. There are other opportunities that I want to touch on real quick. Kind of keep an open mind about some of these opportunities. There are electives across the university that you can take, such as in public administration, urban planning, sociology. We have a joint Master of Public Health and Social Work program. So you can basically get 2 degrees for a reduced amount of time and a little less money. Right now I'm the lead for that too. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me if that sounds interesting to you. Graduate certificate in entrepreneurship, one for not-for-profit management, and a number of certificates in social work. One other thing I want to touch on real quick before I wrap up is there's something called the Schweitzer Fellowship. This is a national organization that has, I guess you call them chapters in different cities, and there's one in Detroit. And what this does is provides a stipend for graduate level students. It's not just social work, but social workers can apply, social workers, nursing, public health, and they get a stipend to help support kind of living expenses. And what you do is you develop, and with the support of a faculty member, a service project, and then you implement it. And it's a really great opportunity to kind of start developing a program and learn what that's like, and have the opportunity to really have an impact, while also getting support, and through this fellowship process. So if you're interested in that, there's information here. Dennis is the contact. You can go to the website, or also our Dr. O'Donnell would be someone to talk to as well. She can give you a little more info, and even if you wanted a kind of a warm handoff introduction to Dennis, they do that as well. So as I wrap up, keep in mind, as I said, a social work practice is a continuum. It's not just macro, micro. So you got to think about where do you fall on that continuum? A lot of the basic social work skills are applicable in a range of settings. That's what makes, I think, social workers so effective in the work that we do. We look at the whole picture, individual to society. We're committed to social justice. And remember, you have options, right? So take this opportunity especially when you're in the program, to ask questions, to try new things, because you have that ability to do that now. And moving forward, never feel like you're trapped, like you're stuck, like, okay, this is the route that I took when I was in my MSW program. I have to go that route. You have opportunities. You have the ability to change directions because the social work skills that you have are so versatile. And oh, that's it. That's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. Just jason.carbone@wayne.edu is the best way to get a hold of me. If you have questions, you want to talk about this a little further, I'm here. I'm here to help you out. So stop my
Thank you very
screen share.
much. All right, thank you, Dr. Carbone. Anwar and Andre, we have a couple minutes. Are there any questions that Drs. Carbone and Brown can answer before we move on?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that might be helpful is someone asked about let me find it what are the pros and cons of pursuing a career as a counselor with an MSW versus a master's in counseling? I don't know if anyone wants to take that.
I'll jump in. I think the benefits of social work is its versatility, and the fact that if you go to do counseling and you decide you want to do something else, having a master's in social work is going to open a lot more doors and a lot more diverse doors than a master's in counseling will do for you. Also, I think social work has some very, very strong professional organizations. I would say stronger than mental health counselors. You'll find a lot more clinical social workers out there and a lot stronger professional organizations as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Dr. Brown couldn't have said it better myself. I often really like to tell this really quick anecdote. There's this store by my house that I walk by when I go for walks with my fiance all the time. And it wasn't until recently that I found out it's a sustainability store. So it's a store you go in, you take your empty shampoo bottles and soap bottles and you refill them to reduce the amount of plastic. It's run by a graduate of our MSW program. So you can own and operate a small business with an MSW degree. Just as an example of the many different things that we can do with this degree, it's not just therapy and mental health that you might with some other helping profession degrees, although that's a big part of what we do, right? So just something to think about. I often tell students an MSW is a degree in people. So if you're trying to work with people, this is the place to do it.
All right, thank you so much. Why don't we move on to our panel, and then we will continue to answer some of the questions as they come along. Again, if you haven't, just please put them in the chat and we will get to them either during the discussion or at the end with the Q&A. So what I'm going to do is we have, let's see, do we have all of our panelists here? Look, we have most of them here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them, and then I'll kick it off with one question that each of you can answer, and then we'll go from there. So as I mentioned earlier, the panel is made up of our MSW alumni. So all of these individuals have graduated from our MSW program and have gone on to do very exciting things with their degree and are going to discuss that today. So our first panelist is Juliet Gustafson, who was on the IP track. She is a clinical social worker, is doing quite well in her private practice in the Washtenaw County area. We have Taylor Alpert, who is the I-CPL track, who is legislative director in the office of State Representative James Churches. We have Christy Andreski Price, also I-CPL, who is currently the Interprofessional Education Program Manager within the School of Social Work. So she stuck around and is still part of our department. And then, as is Dominique Golden, who is a founder of Collective Impact nonprofit organization and program coordinator for the Continuing Education Department at Wayne State University School of Social Work. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here. We really appreciate it, you taking the time. Look forward to hearing what you have to share. So I will start it off with the first question. Could you briefly introduce yourself and describe in a few minutes your career path following graduation from our program? And Juliet, why don't we start with you?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Juliet. I'm a private practice owner and social worker. I graduated in May of 2020 with my MSW, which, as you can imagine, was a really wild time to start this profession. Right after graduating, I got a job at a community mental health center on the east side of Detroit, where I did intensive home-based therapy service. I worked with kids and teenagers and their families, and it was a very I got thrown right into all the good social work stuff. From there, a year or so after I started there, I went to a private practice in Ypsilanti that primarily worked with people who had chronic pain and trauma. So I worked with people with those lived experiences, as well as I worked with kids and teenagers who are part of the LGBTQ community. And in this job, I kind of realized that my main treatment interest was actually OCD specific therapy. So about a year ago, I opened my own practice, and I work with teens and adults who have obsessive compulsive disorder and obsessive compulsive related disorders. It's been a really wild 4 years, but I'm happy to be here now. And in addition to doing my private practice, I also have an Instagram account where I make OCD educational content, which is a really fun additional part of my work that's mostly just free because I'm making videos, but it's been a really great way to connect with other professionals. And I also use Instagram as my primary referral source, which is a very fun, unexpected thing. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Why don't we move on? So we do have a fifth panelist that I apologize did not introduce. So why don't we move on to Jeffrey Williams, who is a clinical social worker and also the owner and lead therapist at Revived Mind Counseling. Jeffrey, would you just share a bit about yourself and your career path?
Yes, and I'm happy to be here. And I would start by saying that I graduated from Wayne State in 2016. And then upon 2016, I started my career in community mental health. So I've worked in community mental health, worked with families, youth, worked with a little bit of adults, and was able to kind of serve the community in Southwest Counseling Solutions, where I got my start. And then upon that, I got some experience working as a school social worker, and then ventured off into private practice. And after working in private practice, I kind of have developed my niche in working with athletes. And then I was able to take the first role at the University of Tennessee as the Assistant Director of Mental Health and Wellness. And then that led me to being a social worker that's in the field of working, providing clinical and performance work for just college athletes and high school athletes and even professional athletes. And now I have, from that experience that I had, I created Revive Mind Counseling. And will be 2 years next month of having the private practice going, and now we service high school athletes, athletes that are in college, and professionals as well, and then a whole host of other different specialties. So that's just a little bit about myself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So next we have Taylor Alpert. Taylor, would you share a bit about your work?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Taylor Alpert. I currently serve as legislative director to State Representative Jamie Churches, who is a state representative in the state of Michigan. So I'm here in Michigan now. And I did my MSW MPH dual degree program at Wayne State. So if anyone does have any questions about that specifically, please feel free to reach out. I can leave my contact information. But I did that program at Wayne State. I graduated in 2022. And really what led me to the job that I have now is I did my second field placement in the School of Social Work for State Senator Stephanie Chang. And so I was like a community engagement and outreach intern for her office for a year. And she actually connected me with the now Representative Churches, who at the time had just started her campaign for state representative. So I ended up running her campaign in 2022 in the midterm elections. And then after we won her race, I ended up coming aboard as her legislative director in the House. So that's what I do now, and I love it. And I'm happy to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Christy, how about, would you mind introducing yourself and sharing a bit about your work?
Sure. I'm Christy Price. I graduated in 2015 with my MSW with the macro track. After graduation, I went and worked and did some nonprofit work, working primarily with immigrants and refugees, doing kind of volunteer coordination and setting up resources for the families that they serviced. Then I transitioned to working over in higher ed. I started at a different university doing work with first-generation college students and non-traditional students, and then shifted into working with kind of student success and student conduct, and then shifted over to Wayne State, working for Dr. Brown, who's here tonight. I worked as a program assistant for a federal grant that she still has. And it was a great experience for me. And I was so excited to come back to Wayne State. I've been here pretty much ever since. My current role is that I am the Interprofessional Education Program Manager. So I coordinate a lot of different opportunities for students to work with other disciplines across the university and expand their knowledge and their work experience. And then I also have been teaching part-time since 2020 in the School of Social Work as well.
Thank you. And we're very happy to have her. All right. So last but not least, Dominique, could you please go?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I am Dominique. I graduated in 2019 for the macro community development platform there at Wayne. I think it's a minor now, but at the time it was a specialization, the social entrepreneurship specialization. So during my program, I fell in love with social entrepreneurship. So really marrying business and social work. So by the time I graduated, my dream was to go into corporate social responsibility, but nobody wanted to hire me. So the community development jobs were like, hey, your resume looks too businessy. And then the business folks were like, your resume looks too social worky. So it was really tough. So I just dove headfirst into my nonprofit. At the time, it was Rights for Refugees. And so that's what I founded there at Wayne State through their amazing programs. I was able to get funding there. And from there, during COVID, I realized that, of course, more people, including refugees, needed support. So I expanded there to help different seniors and veterans, and so established a few partnerships from there. And then I started doing consulting, so working with different private practices, helping them on the business end of their businesses. And I formed a lot of amazing relationships at the time at Wayne State, and so they had an opportunity to develop their community education department. So I was like, sure, why not? So I'm here now supporting Dr. Johns. You guys will have her as a BSW professor for a few classes. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, there's a great wealth of experience here among our panel, and all of them are doing very cool work. So again, thank you all for being here. So I'll get started with one question, and then, if there's anything that pops up, Anwar and Andre, please let me know. But for our, prospective and current students, and by the way, I'm not going to go through and ask each of you to answer, so you don't feel you're on the spot. So feel free to answer a question if you would like to, otherwise you can skip it. But for our students and our attendees, what about the MSW program was most helpful to you for your career and your success?
I can start if you want, Lisa.
Please, thanks.
So I think probably practicum, your internships. So I did not have a BSW. I did the full 2-year MSW program. Excuse me. And I think you can get such a wealth of information from your practicum in figuring out things that you do want to do and things that you don't want to do. My first practicum, I wasn't really on top of it, and I registered really late, and I ended up somewhere that I was like, this is not interesting to me. It's an amazing organization. Kids Talk Children's Advocacy Center does amazing work. It was not anything I wanted to be involved with. So I quickly learned that interpersonal was not going to be for me. And it wasn't something that I could see myself doing for the rest of my career. My second internship was a complete flip, fell in love with community work, working with agencies who are really focused on kind of restorative justice and engaging communities and providing opportunities. I was working with Michigan Roundtable for diversity and inclusion. But the biggest thing I got out of that was the director of the agency, who was my practicum instructor. He gave me some great resources and was a great reference and connection for several of my next jobs when I got out of school. And I think you really want to forge those connections because they can be really powerful. Detroit is a big city, but it's also really feels like a really small city sometimes, and especially in the field that we're in, everybody knows everybody a lot of the time. And so when I called Steve up and I was like, hey, I'm applying for this job. Do you know anybody over there? And he goes, oh yeah, definitely. I'll submit a reference for you. 100%, I think you'd be a great fit for it. So I think it's really powerful when you kind of make those connections and people see the work that you've done and have faith in you and will kind of be a reference for you later on.
Thank you so much. And I think that's such an excellent point. I had the same experience in my program where I ended up at a different placement. And it turned into a job, and I met some wonderful people. And so I had great experience. So thank you for sharing that. Any other panelists, would you like to respond to this? Jeffrey?
Yeah, I wanted to raise my hand because sometimes when you're on Zoom, we can just
I
kind of
know.
shout out at the same
I
time.
can see all of you clearly, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So as I'm reflecting on this, I think that it's not so much one thing, but I think the faculty for me, when I think about people like Anwar or Teresa Green, the professors, the Sarah Doyle, all these individuals, when I was a student, I was on a 3-year track at the time, and these individuals helped me while I was getting through the program. And those valuable lessons that I gained from any interaction with them, whether it was about meeting with them regarding a field placement or whether it was taking a CBT class. Those things helped me as a practitioner. And I remember those things as a student. You know, I remember those things like, hey, these are some interventions that you want to use when you're working with the client, or hey, this is some ethical things that you have to be aware of as a social worker, or this is how you balance life as a, you know, when you have a lot of things juggling, whether you're as a student. So I think just the faculty that's in Wayne State really helped me be successful as a student. And then looking back, it's like, man, like it's, you know, it's one thing to just be a part of a program, but when you have the right faculty that cares about you, that's going to support you, you remember that when you're out in the field. So that's what I would say, because I can remember there's time when I'm working with certain clients and I can remember certain things that I'm using that I learned from my experiences with these faculty that I have. So that's what helped me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Disclaimer, they are not getting paid to say these things about our program. No, I really appreciate that. Dominique, what would you like to go?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love that Jeffrey mentioned that, because with my mentor, she changed the whole scope of my graduate experience. And looking back at undergrad, I'm like, wow, I actually really loved my grad experience. And one thing that I actually did was, before we met, I went through the website on the School of Social Work, and I was looking through the faculty and like what was going on, trying to see what were their specialty areas. And so I had this experience working at a refugee camp, and I totally switched careers. So when I looked here on the faculty, I saw that Mary Jo Upshaw, I guess I can share her with you guys. So she actually sat on a refugee board. And so I was like, wow, I know that I really want to speak to her. So I went and I looked her up on the website here, and her email was there. So I emailed her and asked her if we could have coffee. And from there, she gave me another resource, and that was the program that helped me build Rights for Refugees. And that's where I received funding. So I think what I like to call it in life is like little breadcrumbs, right? So you get a breadcrumb here, and then it should lead you to the next step. So that's just one thing that you can do to follow up on what Jeffrey said, and get the ball rolling there.
Thank you so much. And I just want to reiterate, I love the comment you made about, like, if you're in the program or thinking about it, if there's a faculty member that you have or that you meet that you connect with or have an interest in their work, should reach out to them, ask to meet and get to know them. It's a great opportunity. We have so many faculty doing a number of amazing things in the Detroit area and beyond. And it's a great networking opportunity also. So thank you, Dominique. Taylor, do you want us to move on? Do you want to jump in? I don't want to. You good? Okay, you're good. Okay. Just to break it up a bit, are there any questions from our attendees that you would like to ask the panel before I move on? Or Andre, Anwar, if there's anyone that you want me to read, let me know.
You're good. Dr. Brown has been good about responding to some specific questions. So
Great, thank you.
thanks.
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to piggyback on the faculty piece, and I put a link in and thank you, Dominique, for putting the other link, but I'll put a link in a page for a page on our website called Focal Areas. So I think the tip about locating faculty that are specialized in certain areas is great. So we actually created this page called Focal Areas, which are just clusters of specializations for special faculty, as well as degree areas and classes. So if there's a specific topic area that you're interested in working in, I definitely recommend checking out that page. That'll kind of show you who in our school is doing what.
Thank you so much. It's a great, great point. All right, it looks like we do have a question from our audience. Cicely.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
And see you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. So I just have a question for anybody who on the panel who was maybe had a full-time job and was also going to school And how did that work out for you, number one? And how did the faculty help you navigate through that? Because I'm really, really nervous about that right now.
Can I take this one first? Oh, never mind. You can take it.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I'll go after you.
okay. I would just say, yeah, I started the program and I had a full-time job that ended up becoming basically I ended up having 2 part-time jobs through the program. But all of that to say, I really lean into communicating that with your professors and with the faculty, because I think a lot of the times like they're all very, very understanding to that. And I think most of the students in these MSW programs and most of the people in my classrooms at least all had full-time jobs, or they had families and were, had lives outside of the MSW program. So I would just say don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and to communicate that to your professors, like up front, and just have those conversations. And it's okay to say to someone, I'm having a really tough week at work, or I have a lot of things going on like in my personal life, or in my career outside of this. Don't be afraid to say that and communicate that, because all the professors at Wayne State, in my experience, have been very understanding. And a lot of the times I had professors who had full-time jobs and were kind of like just adjunct professors at Wayne State. And so they really understood that too. So yeah.
Thank you
You
so
know,
much. Jeffrey, go on. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think I will add. I mean, I think she took the words right off for me. I was working a full-time job, and it was far. It was, oh my gosh, it was like Clinton Township, somewhere like 15 mile in Gratiot where I was working. So the traffic down 94, getting out there and getting back, and then taking the class. So I think for one class, my supervisor allowed me to leave work for like 3 hours. I don't know how he let me do that. I'm gonna leave work, go to class, and then got to go back and do some extra work. So I think that everyone, got a lot on their plate. And the thing, like to what I talked about with the faculty, like even being able to have that conversation with your advisor about, hey, this is everything that I have going on, and then them working with you to put together a good plan for you to be able to get through the courses, or even if they give you some support on how to even communicate that to your professors, is where it will come in to be able to help with that. But for the majority of the people that I've known that got to the program, we all had a ton of stuff going on while we were trying to complete the program.
Thank you. That made me feel a lot better. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well, if any other panelist wants to add to that, I was going to also include a second part of the question, because it's a perfect lead into the next one I had, which is, yes, and self-care. Thank you, Jennifer. That's a great comment. But not only working while in the program, but any other challenges you faced while you were in the program that you'd like to share that might help out our attendees.
I can go. So there were a couple of things that were really interesting about the time that I was in my MSW program. The first was that the last like 2.5 months of it were all virtual because of COVID, which was a really wild thing. But one thing that was a little bit of an unexpected challenge so I did the advanced standing program. So it was the like 10-month program, and my internship right before the semester started, the internship that I had planned to do ended up, it didn't end up working out, and it like fell through. And I was really anxious about that, because I was like, I need to get experience and this is really stressful. And it ended up being kind of a blessing in disguise, because the faculty were really helpful and we were able to kind of like scramble in the last like week before classes. And I ended up getting placed in a child welfare specific internship that was with an adoption and foster care agency. And then as part of that, I got to be part of this like collaborative that Wayne State had. I don't know if it's still a thing, but it's called the Wayne Together Collaborative. And it's a child welfare specialization program where you take your social work classes and then you also take like a few child welfare specific. So classes related to like the juvenile justice system, foster care, adoption, children's protective services, things like that. And then when you graduate, you actually are closer to getting a child welfare certificate. So it ended up being very informative, and I learned so much from those internships. And had the original internship not fallen through, I probably wouldn't have done child welfare and learned about those things. It was a blessing in disguise, but it was really challenging for like a few weeks there.
Glad that worked out. Thank you. Dominique.
Yeah, I was gonna say that so I ended up leaving my job and I moved home with my dad, and thankfully, he welcomed me in. But I did too much. I think I was just an extremist. In my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just gave up all of this stability and I am going to try to do everything I possibly can. So once my program is over, I have something going for myself afterwards. But I really, looking back, it hasn't been until these last 2 years where I've really slowed things down for me personally, where I look back and I think like, man, I think kind of a scarcity mindset. And I think that it's really important to, while you're in this program, to really prioritize like what are the things you really need to get done and let go of the things that you're just saying yes to say yes to because it looks good or whatever. It's also a time to understand like what setting boundaries looks like for you. That could be in some of the relationships that you have, some of the things that you're entertaining, because you saying yes to your program now is saying that you're opening new doors for yourself. You're going to meet new people. You're going to establish new relationships. And one of the things I realized is that going through this program literally made me reevaluate every area of my life. And I did macro, and I felt like I was in my program was micro for a minute, because if you think that you're going to dive into other people's business and try and help them without diving into your own, I want to let you know that that is not going to shake. Okay, this is you are going to have to look at yourself in the mirror and figure out some things that are working well for you and some things that you got to make some adjustments in. One of the things I need to do is set some boundaries and actually experience and enjoy life and be present, because I was always trying to go because I thought that I had to meet all these goals. So that's what I would say. Also, I'm going to put a book in the chat that helped me do this. Nedra is actually an alum. She's a best-selling author. She just spoke at one of our continuing education workshops last week, which one of the reasons why I love Wayne State, right? Where we do things like that. So feel free to check out her book. It was really helpful for me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I second Juliet's comment. Excellent advice. Thank you. Any other panelists want to jump in, or we can move on to the next?
Lisa, I don't know if any of the panelists went part-time, but there was a question about in the chat for anyone who may have gone part-time. How did you make ends meet financially, or what kind of work did you do part-time while you were in the program and doing your practicum placement?
Well, for me, I think I left my full-time job because I realized that I was getting closer to graduation, and I just wanted to be more prepared to give more time towards the field of social work. So I was substitute teaching until I got finished. I was doing substitute teaching. I was doing some video work at the time. Like I was just doing whatever I could do, I guess, because it didn't really matter so much. I just needed to do what I needed to do so that I can get to the finish line, which was graduating. But one of the things that was very good for me, it was that being able to substitute. And so I substituted at Warrendale for some time. Warrendale Elementary, that's where I substituted at. So that worked for me when I was in school.
Thank you.
I just want to add to this too. Yeah, I never went part-time, but I did work a variety of jobs through the program. I went food service. I did all sorts of things. But what I really want to plug, because I think part of the question just asked about like balancing like your own personal financial needs. And I would say like for me personally, I really, really started working on like how to balance a budget. It was like the first time in my life that I actually had to take the time and do research and look at my bank statements and what I was spending money on and where I was spending money at and look at my expenses at that point in time in my life. And just lay out a budget. I mean, there's tons of resources online. There's a podcast that I like called The Financial Feminist. I guess I can plug her on here. But all of those things are super duper helpful. And I think it not only did it, help me through the program, but it's made me be a lot better with my own budget and finances now. So yeah.
Juliet, were you going to say something, or Christy? No? Okay. Right. Great question. Thank you for asking that, Rachel. All right. So, we talked a little bit about this, but, we often have students who are struggling to decide which concentration to pick between IP and I-CPL. And I'm wondering if you speak a little bit more to which one you chose. Did you feel like it really influenced where you went with it? Some of you already gave examples of how it hasn't, but if you could talk a little bit more about how much did that matter, and did it help, not help, etc.
Yeah, I think I knew pretty early that I think I wanted to go into macro social work. I had been, after undergrad, was working at a youth shelter for a little while, trying to figure stuff out. And I was like, well, this is really interesting, but I'm more kind of interested in how they fund these places. And someone who worked there was like, well, that's a thing, and you can go get a degree in that. So I was like, okay, I'll kind of explore that. But I think one of the great benefits of the program is that you have the space to kind of take electives back and forth and really like connect with faculty that are in your interest area. So like Dominique was saying and others are saying, like find people that are in your interest area. I think personally, like from my own work with students, I think it's easier if you think you want to do clinical to go clinical and add in some macro electives type of thing, but just look for like what interests you the most with like the faculty who teach these different courses. And then I think you'll find space in your schedule to fit in the things that interest you and get the skills that you need to after graduation. And also look at electives outside of social work. There's still several that you can take if you want to kind of expand your horizons. The Urban Studies department has some great ones, poli-sci, that type of stuff too.
That's a great point, that you can take electives outside of the social work and look, if there's anything that you want to fill a gap in terms of information you want, to definitely talk to your advisor about that.
I can go next.
Thanks.
So for me, I knew going into the MSW program that I wanted to do some sort of interpersonal work. So I did the IP track. And for me, the thing I didn't really expect that I think is important for all of us to like acknowledge and realize when we finish is that we learn a lot in the master's program, but like the bulk of the learning and the kind of implementation happens after you graduate. And for me, I think I put a lot of emphasis on like, I have to take every single perfect elective in my MSW program so that way I can be prepared. And I think, Christy, what you said, that was really good about how if you think you might want to do some sort of interpersonal work, it's better to do like the IP track and then add the macro credits. I think that is what a lot of my peers did who ended up doing some of both. Because when you graduate, you can do macro work even after studying the interpersonal. It's harder to kind of go the other way for a lot of times because you do need to be licensed to do clinical like therapy or those types of jobs. So if therapy is even something, or the more interpersonal work is something that even like part of you might be interested in, covering your bases and doing that track could be best, while also knowing that there's so much flexibility and you can definitely switch. You're not stuck with this forever.
Thank you so much. Great points. Yes, it's not a final decision, right? You doesn't force you to stay in one way, in one direction. Any other panelists like to add to that?
Yeah, for me, I knew that I wanted to eventually be in private practice. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So at the time I was in a program, it was the interpersonal track. I may have to check with Lawrence to see it's a different structure now. So Lawrence would probably be very upset with me if I don't know the exact way it's structured now. But the interpersonal track was allowing me to be to take the courses so that I can do the clinical work, taking the CBT courses and taking the DSM-5 courses and things like that. And all of that really helped me. And it gave me that confidence that when I was able to sit in front of somebody about the experience that I had, and even prior to me graduating, early on, we got those experiences, whether we were practicing with classmates on different assignments. You know, I can remember going to the UGL and then, you know, my peer would act like a client and I would be the practitioner, and then we would reverse. Then we would be able to learn from that experience and then recording and then doing those type of assignments. And then by the time we got to field placement, doing the work, you felt pretty much comfortable and ready to get out when you graduate and felt equipped to be able to do the work. So I felt like the interpersonal track for me was exactly what I needed. I never felt like, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, of course, it was a lot for me to still learn. And as I got into the field with learning the systems and how each organization operates, but having the basis of learning how to, you know, be person-centered, being able to build relationships and be an ethical social worker, you gained all that from the track that I took as far as the interpersonal course that I took at the time I was in the program.
Thank you so much. And you know, one thing that I often remind my students, because it can feel overwhelming, is you learn a lot in this program. And you don't have to remember everything that, you know, you're like Juliet said, there's a lot of learning that continues when you graduate from the program. And so it's really to give you a baseline knowledge and also open up, you know, what possibilities are there for what direction you'll take. Dominique, I believe you wanted to add something.
Yeah. I was gonna say that I actually wasn't too sure. I didn't come into the program confident. I actually remember I was in one of my first classes and it was so heavy on the social work side and feelings and stuff, right? I'm coming from the totally opposite world. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, I made this wrong choice. What do I want to do? And I would just say, like, just give it some time, and be patient. So even though if it feels overwhelming in the beginning, just remember, like, this is something that's new and you're going to be okay. You're going to make it through. I would say find a buddy that has similar interests as you, even if they're confident. You say, hey, I'm exploring, right? But like, just having someone that you can confide in and do the program with, I think is something that's really helpful, because you're going to have some nights where you need to kind of vent. You're going to have days where you forget you needed to do something, right? But having a buddy kind of helps you stay on top of certain things too, I think is always helpful, you know. So just remember that you're not alone in this. And I know I can vouch for us here. We're happy to help out. You know, if you need to shoot us an email or something, we can always provide some encouragement there too.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really important to think about too, that everyone's in this together, right? And in your cohort, there's a lot of people. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely made some lifelong friends when I was in my MSW program that were so supportive during and continuing to be. So it's really nice to have that. All right, so I'm gonna just since we're getting towards, let's see, Taylor, you good? Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you. So I wanted to open it up just for questions. Again, I want to remind you that you can ask a general question to the panel, to the faculty as well regarding these topics that we're covering. You can also ask a specific question to one of the panelists if you're interested in doing so. But please add it to the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask them directly.
Maybe as we're waiting for folks to put them in, there seem to be some questions in the chat about when it might be appropriate to do a PhD or a DSW. And maybe someone can talk about that, and that a lot of folks tend to stop at the MSW as the terminal degree, but when might it be appropriate for either a DSW or a PhD?
I can say something about that. It would be helpful. Okay. So when we talk about PhD, we're really talking about a research degree. PhD usually means that you're going to develop some deep, broad skills in actually doing research. And usually people get PhDs in social work because they actually want to work in academia as professors, or they want to work for research institutes, actually kind of gathering their own data around specific research questions and kind of writing that information up for the scientific community, let's say. So if, I think if that is very interesting to you, then a PhD may be an appropriate thing to kind of look at. A DSW usually folks get when they want to have greater influence or greater leadership, often in kind of clinical agencies or in the clinical world. So a DSW will actually help you develop your skills clinically, but not just clinical skills, kind of a deeper knowledge and thought process around usually clinical theory. And so you may then be in a position to also work in academia, but more as a clinical faculty member, as someone who provides leadership around our clinical understanding of things, who maybe writes about those issues and also teaches clinical courses. So a DSW can be really useful for that as well. But not a lot of people pursue DSWs because the MSW is still the terminal degree. So if you want to see clients, a DSW is not going to help you make more money doing that. You will get paid the same amount, and MSW will get paid usually. And you don't necessarily need a DSW to move into leadership positions in agency work either. So I think of a DSW as if you really want to kind of engage in some scholarship around social work practice, and maybe if you want to move into academia into like clinical or teaching positions too.
Thank you. Dominique, do you want to answer that question out loud for everybody?
Yes, Anwar, can you repeat it? I'm so sorry. I was
No problem. Yep. Someone wants to know, what was your first step with starting your nonprofit?
Yeah, so it's so funny. I was messaging her back and initially I didn't start it as a nonprofit. Since I was interested in social entrepreneurship, I wanted to do that at last resort. But what happened is I started working with corporations, and they're like, hey, we want to give you money, but you need to be a 501c3 so they can write things off. So that's when I was like, I got to go through this process. So I would recommend that you work with Build Institute and you take a course called Social Impact. So with Social Impact, the School of Social Work has actually partnered with Build before, and I was interning with Build at the time, which made it really cool to learn. And what this program will do, will talk to you about what it looks like to create a nonprofit, create an LLC. You have to know the difference because there's so many technicalities with this, but you just don't, there's a lot of tax things you need to be aware of. You don't want to get yourself in trouble there. You need to understand what type of community partners you'll be working with and the legalities of that as well. So I would recommend taking social impact. That'll help you with the finance part of it too. And then volunteer. I would say volunteer somewhere at a program that you have interest in and just learn from them and learn if it's more valuable to lend your time, support, and efforts to something that's already moving or to create something yourself.
Thank you. Oh, Donna, you have a question?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Is anyone sitting on a board? And also, has anybody published any books or anything? Just a question. Did you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I was looking to our audience to see if somebody wanted to answer that.
I used to, when I lived in Royal Oak, I served on the board of the Royal Oak Opportunity to Serve Foundation, which was a group that they had for the city. And then I've also like sat on some like municipal type of settings. I think it gives you really unique perspective into communities. I lived in Oak Park for a long time, and I actually sat on the youth assistance board there. And it was a really interesting experience. And it really allowed me to kind of mesh the experience I had in my MSW, my macro program, as well as the experience I had prior to that working in a youth shelter. So I highly recommend, like Dominique was saying, like looking for things that might start as a volunteer opportunity that could turn into something more, like being on a board or serving on some kind of council, because there's a ton of places that could use your expertise and your knowledge to be a part of what they do.
Yep. I would also say, so I sat on the board for the National Association of Social Workers for the Michigan chapter. So they do have opportunities for BSWs and MSWs. And I believe that they come to campus once a year. So I would say that was a really great opportunity to just learn the dynamics of a board. If you're also interested in running a nonprofit, I would suggest that as well. You really get to understand the dynamics. You get to understand how to properly allocate funds, and really bylaws. So many different, technicalities. And it's important too that many times we want to dive into starting things, and it's important to know what season you are in life. Sometimes you may be in a season where you need to foster the skill set of leadership, because it's one thing to have a vision and to be talented, but it's another thing to know how to properly lead, motivate, and be an advocate for people. How can you get people to believe in your mission? How do you explain what a vision is? How do you understand what your projections should be for the year in order to make an impact in the communities that you want? So taking this opportunity in grad school to make mistakes, to explore is great. I mean, you're not anything that you do in your program, I mean, excluding failing, right? Like there's no one you're gonna have to answer to. Like just volunteer and see what you can do to really foster those interests, because it takes time to be great, and sometimes we just rush so much. It's like just embrace life and where you're at and take your time.
Thank you so much. Those are great responses. I don't know if any of you have written a book. I have not. I've written chapters. It's a lot of work. I know a few people here have, but I won't put them on the spot. Okay. Donna, did that answer your question?
Yes and no, because you said a few people have written a book. I have Brown in my class in Trauma. So who are the people who have written books?
Can I ask a quick question, Donna? What, out of curiosity, what is it that would be helpful to know about that? Like what the process is like, or just what the content, what the book's about?
Well, we have this panelist, and so it's like you want to know a little bit more about them and also glean. I
Yeah.
like to look at information later. So when I'm feeling frustrated, I can just open a book and I can read it and it'll help me. Because all of you have passed the test and you made it out to your MSW program. And I just want to make it and then continue to grow. Um, I have, I'm writing a book. And so I want to make sure, I mean, great minds think alike, and I just want to know. I want to learn. So if you have written one, you can put it down there, or if you don't have to, I understand. Maybe it's a personal book, but I just wanted to know.
Thank you so much. And that's wonderful you're doing that. Good luck with that process. Yeah, if anyone has a book you want to put in the chat to share with Donna, please feel free. I do want to just remind everyone, we would really appreciate before you leave if you could copy the link for the survey. And it covers both the first session, the information session, as well as this one. We would really appreciate your feedback so we can learn from it and make this even better next year. Anyway, are there any more questions? We have a few minutes left, or any final comments anyone would like to make?
Someone sent me a question just to me, but I think it'd be helpful for folks. Someone asked how they can get a mentor while they're in the program to assist. And we actually have student mentors. So if you're a student in the program already, reach out to Andre and he can connect you with a mentor or your advisor or the success coach. And Tom Ramito is the BSW success coach, and Amelia Abdel Nabi is the success coach for MSW, but any one of them can connect you and with a mentor. We have, I think, 4 or 5 mentors. They're current students in the program that can assist. So I encourage you to reach out. They can be very helpful in helping you to navigate your experience and your application, et cetera.
Thank you very much, Anwar. Anything else? Any final advice, comments from the panelists that you'd like to share that you haven't already?
I would just say, like, don't be afraid to ask questions to anyone that you feel comfortable asking questions to, whether it be your advisor, classmate, another faculty professor. Like don't be afraid to ask those questions and get answers, and don't be afraid to like advocate for yourself in the program. Like a lot of the times like you create like your own experience, right? So like whatever volunteer opportunities that you go after, whatever friendships that you make with classmates, or just whatever practicums you decide to do, like you sort of cultivate that. And so if you have a goal, or if you have an organization that you want to work with, or a person that you want to meet, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and to figure out a way to get there. So
Thank you, Taylor. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say lastly, I believe it's important to just really network with your classmates in the program. I know that I still have friends that I made when we were in the program together. And these are people that I can draw on and get some feedback regarding just all things social work. So you just never know where your peers are going to end up. Like we said, we just had someone who has #1 book selling, I think that Dominique talked about, right? Like, so you just never know who's going to be who. So I would just say try to build relationships with your peers in the class. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. All right, well, if anybody else will go ahead and wrap up. I just want to thank everyone, Dr. Sue Brown, Jason Carbone, Andre, Lawrence, Anwar, and our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time. This was wonderful to hear your experiences, your advice. So thank you, each and every one of you. I really appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind, if you would like, you could put your contact information in the chat. If any students want to contact you, follow up. And I put mine in there as well. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions about the program. And thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. I'll stick around for a few more minutes if you have any other questions. Otherwise, everyone have a wonderful evening.
Andre, you want to stop recording?